Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Elevate Your Week podcast. Today we're here with Gregoire Jules. He is a wedding photographer. He's been in business for about 7 years, and today we're going to talk a little bit about his business, his family, how he got started, some of the hardships he faced while building his business. Gregoire, how are you doing today?
Listen, Chris, I'm great, man. And yourself?
Great.
Thank you for having me, man.
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
Absolutely. Gregoire will actually be doing some courses with us, and will actually be working on the Elevated platform as an educator, doing everything from lighting courses, some business courses, and one of my favorite things that I know you're really great at is connecting with like planners and styled shoots. I mean, I feel like I've seen like you do a million incredible styled shoots, and a lot of the vendors that you work with, it's like very clear that there's like a huge passion behind every project they do. It's really incredible. Tell me how, like, I know I met you about 7 years ago. I bought a rapid strap from you off Craigslist. And I met you like at your old job. You were like, we're gonna like credit consolidate. Yep. And yeah, it was a long time ago. I remember at that time you were still like kind of doing photography a little bit, but you hadn't really like dove into your business yet. What did that starting point look like? What made you kind of want to transition out of that into?
For me, the transition was just, having someone dictate your day every single day is difficult. Telling you what you can do, what you can't do, and it became a little bit. It became a lot restrictive, because what was happening was I would get a gig and I needed Monday off, so I would have to go. I was in management, of course, but then I had to be that great leader for my peers, for my employees. I had to be that really great, hey guys, don't just not show up. But then the manager's doing it, right? So for me, it became an obstacle. And as a result of that, it was one of those, hey, you know what, you have to make a decision. And if the business is going to grow and keep growing, you just be like a bird, you just have to fly out the nest.
Yeah, and I feel like, I came from a similar background. I worked in corporate jobs, 9 to 5s. I was traveling for my old job as a trade show coordinator and stuff, and I hated it. I hated, being dictated where I had to go, what I had to do, when I had to do it. And I just loved the freedom of being able to, day in and day out, I wake up and I'm happy with what I'm doing. And, I get to like reflect on all these amazing couples that I'm working with and amazing clients I have. And so it's such a kind of bittersweet feeling for me, because I don't mind the grind of the 9 to 5. I love being able to like operate on my own terms and like, be able to control what my schedule is going to be.
Yes, that's key.
Yeah, and to me, one of the biggest points is just being happy with what you're doing. And I feel like, a lot of people try to chase their idea of happiness, whether it might be cars or money or whatever the case might be. But I think finding, that thing you're passionate about, being able to make it into your profession kind of will dictate your happiness in the end. And I feel like you'll be much happier when you're waking up every day and you're like, fuck, this is my life,
Yeah. And I mean, granted, I want to be completely honest. Like it's not always, blossoms of flowers, and it isn't, it's difficult. But when you can use your bare hands or your network to, supply your family with everything that they need, and then give yourselves a lot more than you didn't even expect that you can make, it's incredible. And I'll tell this, I'm not here to knock 9 to 5s, because my 9 to 5, helped me. Like some core skills I developed was because of my 9 to 5. Customer service, how to treat people, how to talk to people. Sales, exactly. So one of the things I was happy about was we did a lot of Dale Carnegie, how to treat people, how to speak to people, how to win people over. So those things really helped me, and they're helping me now in my photography career. So it's really beneficial, so. I
used to love the Dale Carnegie stuff. I was probably like, I want to say like 14, 15. My dad has worked at car dealerships pretty much my whole life as a manager.
So you got real
and
sales.
So he, he like had to go to all these Dale Carnegie like in-person trainings and courses. So he had the books laying around. So naturally, one of the first books I ever read was about being a leader. Dale Carnegie was like one of my favorite books. And, from then till now, I probably have read that book 80 times. I have like these 3 books that I read on a constant rotation just because I felt like they've been the most powerful at like helping me kind of organize and manage my time. And they've been like great resources. There's always like those few great resources that you find and you kind of just like keep revisiting.
For sure, because we need that reminder. We do need that reminder because I mean, life continues to happen and sometimes we forget, but we need that reminder. No matter how many times you've read it, no matter how many times you've seen it, we need that reminder because, hey, we need to refresh it. We need to know, hey, how to connect with people, how to win people over, how to treat people, you know, and
that's a big one.
Those,
that's a big
you know,
one.
I think it was Maya Angelou who said, you know, people will, geez, how did I just forget the quote? People won't forget, if something goes where people won't forget the way you treated them, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel, you know, so, and that's important, you know, so that's critical. So I think those core things have helped in my profession. And that's what's helped with a lot of the style shoots because my thing was, if I can win these planners over to show them, hey, you can trust me with your vision. You can trust me with creating, you know, whatever this style that you're looking for. If you can trust me with that and I fulfill it, then we're good. And that's what it was. They trusted me and that's definitely helped a lot. And that's helped with those relationships, you know?
Yeah, that's great. And I know that you have done a lot of education too, kind of in unison with those plannings and working with those planners. And what kind of stuff have you like kind of worked through? Because I know you have your own workshops that you do where you have like a lot of people come out and you like very hands-on training. Tell me a little bit about that.
So we did, it's Exposed Beyond Photography workshop. So last year, 2018. 2018 was the very first one. And we did another one in 2019 and it was absolutely amazing. So the good thing was it was hands-on workshop. It talked about business. It talked about starting your business and basically talked about taxes. You know, it's things that unfortunately YouTube isn't going to show you and a lot of our peers isn't going to tell us. You know, so it talks about,
get to learn it.
You get it. You learn it right here. This is it. So it talked about taxes. It talked about, you know, the different taxations where you can open up a business as LLC and then file as an S corp. A lot of different little perks and benefits that people don't know offset. They just think, hey, I'm going to grab a camera, I'm going to start shooting, and I'm a photographer.
Yep. And you know what I always tell people, and it's kind of funny because when I first got into this business and started doing this, I always told people, you know, they're like, oh, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, well, I'm a photographer and I own my own business. And I've noticed over the years that it's gone from that to people saying, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I'm a business owner and a photographer. And the photographer part's almost come second because I've realized for me, one of the biggest things that I love about what we do is that I approach it less from a visual photography standpoint and more from a service standpoint. I am there to service my clients, for them to be happy, to make sure that they are taken care of. And so I've kind of, you know, not necessarily redirected my business because I still provide the same quality of stuff. I still, you know, do a lot of the same things I did artistically as a photographer. But now my focus is so much sharper in my business because I knew, you know, my photography was at a point where I was happy and I was comfortable. I was able to fulfill the job, but my business was suffering because I wasn't organized. I didn't have, you know, different things in place. I didn't have workflows. All those things caused my business to suffer. And then what happens in turn? Your clients suffer. So then their perception changes. Those wonderful pictures that you had, now they could be amazing, but their perception might be a little shattered from that. Have you ever had like a hardship come from that, like where you've felt like you didn't, you know, really deliver like your best solid work to a client?
Unfortunately, you know, early on when you think you know it all, so you go out sprinting, you know, you're running a marathon at a sprint pace. And I burnt out very early. You know, I was under the impression, and this was before I developed my style, right? I didn't know which direction I wanted to go, so I purchased every preset there was. You know, and
you gotta try everything.
Everything.
You just gotta throw everything
so,
into the basket.
And that was it. It was like, hey, get in there, shake it up, give me something. So the key was for me, I delivered this client's gallery, and sadly, there were no two pictures that had the same feeling. So she received, let's say, 400 images, and 390 of those images were like all different. Like, it just was all over the place, you know. So again, at the point, I was a new photographer. I didn't understand my style. I didn't understand what that was or what it meant. I just thought, okay, hey, add these different presets. This is going to make it right.
It's all about consistency.
There was no consistency, zero consistency. And, she reamed into me pretty hard. But, she did it, but I appreciated it because now it made me take several steps back and say, you know what? I need to go take some courses. I need to see the pros that were doing it well before me, what they're doing. And I need to basically mirror what they're doing and then make my own out of that.
Well, yeah, you'll kind of find your path when you're doing that.
Absolutely.
And I think another, really important thing to touch on is, we're talking about like all this business education and continued business education and all these like really important factors of learning how to really run your business. And one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is they get comfortable in the position that they're in, artistic wise, or, whether it's photography, videography, drawing, design, they get comfortable and they stop the education. And I think, and that's why I brought up your education stuff that you've done, because I think, and even myself, I still go to workshops. I was at a workshop in January. I went to 3 last year. And these are a mix of business workshops and creative workshops, because myself as a wedding photographer, I do probably around like 65 to 70 weddings a year, just myself, not even including the rest of our company. And I get burnt out. And when I get burnt out, I get complacent. When I get complacent, I start following a formula. And when I follow a formula, that's not my style.
You lose creativity.
You lose it all, and you start feeling like every picture you're doing. And then what happens? It becomes a job.
It does.
It becomes a job. It loses all that flashiness and happiness. It kind of just dwindles down. And so I found that, taking a lot of these courses and things that like every year, like I reevaluate where I'm at. I look at my work. I know a lot of people do like those best of, for the year.
No, it's beyond that.
I don't even do that.
No,
it's more for myself to just look at it and really get an idea of where I'm at artistic wise. And you can kind of see the trend throughout the year where I'm like, first wedding, boom, 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 boom. And I'm like doing all this crazy stuff and, doing all these crazy effects. And I'm like, oh man, this is great. And then as the year goes down, it starts getting, more normalized. And this was 2 years, this isn't now, but this was like 2 years ago before I really took that focus on doing a lot of this continued education. And so like, I got a question for you now. What do you feel like is one thing that you are like, really, really want to nail down in 2020? Like what's one of the biggest things you've been working on this year?
So one of the biggest things, like my workshop has been on lighting, and as I said, we walked into the studio, I was like, wow, this is gorgeous. And I asked you about this beautiful lighting setup, right? So lighting is like, that's critical for me. So one of the other things that I follow a lot is, like the MagMod community. Like they have some artists on there that are just amazing. And I have all these tools, right? But I'm grateful for the time that we've had as a result of the lockdown with COVID. So one of the things I've been doing is at home is, hey, let me set up this light setup, take a few shots. Oh, this is nice. So now I want to start incorporating that inside of my photography, because before I wanted everything really clean, and this was what I was doing. Everything was really clean. It looked great, artistic, it was there, but I wanted now, dive a little deeper into creativity with lighting. Add little colors and gels and all these different things. Because one of the things that we get thrown into as photographers, like perfect example, I had a wedding on a yacht. Beautiful yacht. I work at this company all the time. They send me a lot of work and I'm thankful. But it was raining. So it's the smallest yacht of the fleet, and the ceremony was outside on the deck and thunderstorm outside. So at this point, there's no place to do any formal portraits of the couple.
Oh, wow.
So again, now creativity sets in, where there was a small two candelabras on the wall. So I slapped a couple there, used the skills that I knew with lighting and took some amazing shots. Because again, what happens at the end of the day, when you deliver those images, the client don't care that it was raining. They hired a professional, a professional that's going to pull things out and make the best of it.
You got to be able to roll with the punches.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can't.
Absolutely.
I tell this to people all the time. They're like, oh my God, is like something will happen at a wedding. They'll be like, oh my God, is this the craziest wedding you've ever been to? And I'll be like, no. I'll be like, listen, no wedding ever is the same.
None.
It's
Zero.
always different, and I can't remember the last time something didn't go wrong at a wedding, because things go wrong all the time.
And we're the professional. I tell anyone that works with me, and I tell them, hey, listen, when I walk into the room, I'm the conductor. Like everyone around me are playing instruments, and I'm the conductor. I don't care what's happening or who's in the room, but it's my obligation to ensure that I get these key shots. If it's a small room, I need to dismantle it. I need to dismantle the room to get it done, because the client don't care. They don't care. They don't care at the end of the day. So if things go wrong, that's great. I mean, I've shot some crazy things.
Same.
And at the end of the day, when the clients are looking at their photos, they're like, this isn't what happened. Like, where was the chaos? So those things are important, and those things come with time, with experience. They come with just applying yourself and taking workshops and continue to learn. Because if you're doing the same things you did 10 years ago, no,
it's not going to work.
I mean, things don't even look the same anymore. So so that's one of the things that we have to be mindful of. But that was one of the things for me. It's now getting more creative with lighting, just getting more creative and just really making it real dramatic. I want some dramatic, dramatic artwork within the art that I'm creating now, so I want to take that route.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, and I'm very similar in the same sense, like especially like indoor weddings, I don't really like to heavily rely on the fluorescent lighting sometimes. Like sometimes it's okay if I'm going for that type of style, or if it's during a dance, shows action, candidness, anything like that is fine. But when we're doing portraits and we have to primarily shoot in an inside area, or the client wants something like that, I always go for the big setups. At least as big as I can manage by myself, because I'm not going to be that guy to bring out a giant C-stand with my flashpoint lights. Like no, it's a lot, and I shoot a lot of weddings by myself, and so I think it's so important to know how to use lighting. One of the biggest things I've ever seen is receptions. Oh my goodness. And not knowing how to control that atmosphere in there while exposing the couples correctly. They spend so much money on that uplighting, and for you to not
blow the room out.
No. Yes, exactly. So that's why I always harp for like continuing education, and I myself, do the same thing. I want to talk to you a little bit about your business, and we kind of touched on some of like those hardships. Was there like, because myself, I deal with, anxiety, depression, ADHD. So, there's some days where like it is so hard for me
to speaking to me, man.
That's what, and it's so hard for some days to like just even get out and be able to function. And I gotta like, even on wedding days, like I'm there 100%. It doesn't matter if I had a bad week, a bad day. I am, my mind changes, my mood changes. I gotta do that to myself so that I'm ready to go.
Absolutely.
What kind of stuff do you do to like, get like when you're in one of those funks, what do you do to like pump yourself up?
So, and that's the one thing I want to say to everybody, like, no one is ever on every day. No. It's not possible. Nope. There's no such thing as perfection. There's no such thing as the perfect person. And if you show me that person, I'm like, yeah, that person is perfectly flawed. It doesn't exist. So for me, like I'm with you. Like I battle depression, all these things, but I know what gives me the peace of mind is working out, right? Working out gives me a sense of release, and running gives me that sense of escape. And sometimes, and I'll tell, my partner, I'm like, babe, I need to just go for a run, or I need to go for a walk, just to clear my headspace. Yeah. Because there's times, and we've spoken about editing before, there's times where I'm editing a wedding and I'm like, man, I am tired of looking at these images. So I just walk away from it, and I'll take a day. The next morning, I try to get up and do something productive. So for me, what gets me going is the earlier I get my day started and I feel that I've accomplished something, I've worked out, I've maybe went outside and picked some weeds in the lawn.
Hey, it's whatever.
It sounds insane, right?
No, it's not.
And that in itself helped me. But for wedding day, like my routine is crazy. Like I get up, I work out, I pump out real crazy. On the way there, based on my mood, I can be listening to like some really grunge rock, or I can be listening to some classical music, or I can be listening to some 90s hip hop, something. Music helps shift my mood, and based on what I know about the couple, I will take that. If they're really hype and they're turned up and they are like one of those really outgoing personalities, then I want that same I want that same music to keep me pumped up. But if they're mellow, I try to be that mellow, but I also try to do something to bring a little bit of like spaz in the room. Like, hey guys, let's bring up the mood in here, you know? Yeah, but for me, working out helps a lot.
Yeah, and for me, I can be a very high energy person especially on a wedding day. Yeah. But kind of contrary to what you said, one of the ways, like, because I know you said you like listen to music and you like all sorts of different stuff while you're driving to a wedding. I'm kind of the opposite. I live my life by music. Yeah. On the way to weddings and coming home from weddings, I listen to nothing. Wow. I listen to silence. Wow. And when I get there, I usually will arrive to my weddings usually about 30 minutes to an hour early. Yeah. First 15, 20 minutes that I'm there, I sit in my car, decompress, clear my head, get in the right mindset, and then I go in. And that helps me kind of, you know, even if I am having one of those really rough mornings or nothing seems to be going right, I kind of reset myself with those 15 minutes where I just disconnect. So that way when I go in there, I can bring that same energy. Because that's like a big part of why a client hires you is going to be the quality of work you do, but it's also the experience, it's you. Exactly. So I know that, you know, for my client, especially if there was somebody who referred to me, and then, you know, the person who referred them is at their wedding, like, and they saw me at the other person's wedding, and I'm like on and all over the place. You better believe I better be on at that next wedding too. Absolutely. Yeah, because then that can kind of change the perception a little bit. So yeah, for me, it's very strange. Like the silence thing, it's very, very.
No, but that's zen. But that's good. That is good. That is good. You know what I've done at one wedding was I bought, and I forget which photographer it was, but it was a photographer who basically did stuff out of India, and it was the real intense, like the eyes and the colors. And it was a street photographer, and so before some weddings, I was like, you know, let me try just to look through this book, a different aspect, a different approach, and just look for like creative ways, just to look at things differently. And that was one of the best weddings I shot as well, because I went in not looking at wedding images, but just looking at another creator's, like he was just amazing, just the way he was. The inspiration was there, and I was able to create things just based on, I guess, the flow that was going on in my mind. You know, my mind, it was just ticking. Everything was on. So that helped too. But me, I'm all over the place when it comes to motivation and get me going. But I'm going to try that. I'm never going to try that. I'm going to try the silence. Different. I am. Now, I've had to do that leaving away one day.
Let me guess. Hold on. But it wasn't because of the DJ's music.
No. Chris, I was driving home like, I don't want to hear it. It was intense. It was intense.
I've had a few of those, but the whole, like, you know, after wedding, you know, there's so much background noise going on all day long that, like, I don't want to get home and have that same energy level, because my wife will kill me if I show up at 12 o'clock with that energy level. So that's kind of like my time when I'm driving home and I'm like decompressing. So when I get home, I'm like way more tame and like calm than I was at the wedding, especially if the wedding day wasn't kind of going, you know, as best as it could be. What's your favorite place you've been to shoot? Because you've done some like destinations.
Oh man, right? For me, we a friend of mine, I was able to. Well, two of my favorite places was Santorini. We went to Greece, so we went to.
I remember seeing that.
So Santorini was absolutely amazing. But for me, Italy, and we were in Tuscany. Breathtaking. Like I love the old country. I love the fact that, and it's odd though, you know, it's everywhere else around the world but the United States, right? That they have preserved the culture as far as like in the buildings. Oh yeah. You know, so you're talking about things that are hundreds of thousands of years old, and they're just there. And it was like walking down the street and you see the Colosseum, and you're like, wow, I've read in history books where they flooded this thing and it had battleships in here. And now you're walking down in Paris and you're like, wow, they painted these things gold. And it's, you know, that to me it blew my mind.
Yeah, and even here, like, you still have like a lot of these buildings that have been around for years and years and years, but you go there and it's like, my whole family is from the Azores, like Portugal. And so there's like a lot of that old architecture. You go there and look at it and it's like, it's beautiful, and it like so well preserved. But then you look at buildings, like a lot of buildings here where it's like only like 150 years old, and you're like, wow.
What went wrong? But this is why I like Coral Gables as well. You know, I like going down to the Gables because it brings back a lot of that old Spaniard feel, like, you know, like the Prado entrance.
Oh yeah.
Even like Vizcaya. But I like the Gables because it gives me that feeling. It gives me that old feeling mixed with something new, you know, and I just love to see preserved things, and that to me, it's really, it intrigues me.
Same.
Yeah.
Next question I had for you was, we talked about like a little bit of a hardship, and I know you've really like reached out and like have achieved some really, really major goals in your time as like a photographer. What do you think was like the biggest achievement overall that you've had?
Wow. You know, I think as an artist,
And I'll preface it with besides your family.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't want, you know, family first.
Yes, I mean, of course, we know, you know, it's family, of course, absolutely. Yes. But in my career as a photographer, I think seeing my work in print it never gets old, right?
Yeah.
You know, so I know recently I shot a wedding in Chicago. So that wedding was in print in Modern Luxury Chicago edition. Oh, nice. So it was in print there. And then another Atlanta-based publication is called the B Collective magazine. So with that one, I had like 12, I think. Well, it was 10. 10 different parties featured there. So being featured in print is great. I mean, even being featured digital is amazing too, because now the world gets to see it, because it's funny, you look at something and you're like, wow, you know, this is a photographer that did this. This is really cool. So now when you are in that, you know, and walking in those shoes, it's like, wow, this is my work.
It's a good feeling.
You know, that's a great feeling. Another thing that I'm really, 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 really proud of is, and this goes back to the workshop, watching someone come to the workshop, take the course, but then really grab onto you, and they are just like a sponge, absorbing everything that you suggest. And now they are an amazing creative, you know, and you sit back and you're like, man, I love it. You know, and that's one thing about me is like, I don't have that complex of saying, oh my God, Chris, you're by far a greater artist than I am. That's nonsense, you know, because we're each at different levels, you know, and that's how I look at it.
Yeah,
you know?
and your business, you have an idea of like where you want your business to go. I have an idea of where my business wants to go. Yeah. And you know, it's never going to be the same path. And that's one of the biggest things that I kind of harp on is I hate the, you know, competitiveness.
It's nonsense.
For me, I think, you know, that number one, you're in such a saturated place that there's enough weddings to go around. Yeah. I don't look at people as my competitors. No. They could have the same style as me. They can copy me. Matter. They could do whatever they want because they're not me. Exactly. And so, you know, one of my real big takeaways from the past 2 years was that I've been able to, you know, continue to develop and grow my business, you know, up to 6 figures and then well past that. Yeah. And one of the biggest things I love doing now is being able to share all this incredible knowledge that everybody's been so gracious to share with me, whether I paid for their, you know, whether I paid for their workshop or seminar, or it's just somebody who met me for coffee and just kind of like, you know, we sat there and just kind of jived for a little bit and talked about like different things in the wedding industry, or they gave me some tips on like shooting video, whatever the case may be. You know, I'm really grateful for all those kind of interactions I've had with a lot of people. And so, you know, I want to do the same thing for other people and be able to, you know, help them with their businesses and be able to build their businesses. And that's why I'm, you know, really excited to kind of, you know, join forces with you, have you come on.
No, I'm excited. I really am. You know, because, you know, people will never forget what you do for them. They won't. You know, that's just something that you won't forget that. You know, and that to me is extremely important, to be able to pour back into a young, like, you know, they say a young struggling artist, into a young artist, or just give them a tip. Like one of the things, you know, this is a tip, you know, before we get into the pre-recordings, is just about something as simple as like payroll. You know, like I know artists that are doing great, doing amazing, but sir, are you paying yourself, or are you just dipping into your business account? You know, there's ways you can do this, right, and really benefit, and just little tidbits like that, and it's like, oh, that's part of it. Oh, yeah. That's part of the business side of it. You know, like creation is great, but pouring little stuff like that, because again, you're not going to find that knowledge on YouTube. You're not going to find that. And a lot of people aren't just going to be willing to just share that information. So me telling you that, or me telling another artist that, takes nothing away from me.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. So that's my approach. I love to give back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. And I mean, like you said, it's never going to take anything away from you, because I could sit here and literally tell somebody exactly how I edit, the exact way I do everything. And you know what? They're definitely not going to be able to replicate it. That's why you see so many people selling their presets and stuff. They don't have fear of people copying their work, because most of the people can't replicate it. And it's because it's not them. And so, I kind of live off the motto that, like, anybody who messages me, usually, I'm more than happy to divulge any information. And, I'm a totally open book, because I was lucky enough to have a few mentors, in my time coming up, who were very open and willing to give me a lot of information. And me, I'm like a fucking sponge. I just constantly want all of that information. So it's been really beneficial for me to get to sit and see where other people are at in their business, and really kind of find clarity in, I was once in that position, where I quit my day job on a whim one day. I was a Monday, I was just over it. I was so burnt out, so tired, so frustrated, and I literally sent an email and quit.
But look at you now.
Exactly, and it was because, and at the time, like, I was on a much different, like, I didn't just quit my job. I was on a much different schedule, and my part-time was kind of different there at that point, because I had already started to try and dive into the photo industry. But at the time, like, I probably had enough money in my bank account to support 2 months of rent and my car payments. And so that was a very scary time for me. But I literally, the next morning after that happened, I woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning, just like I did every single day going to work. The only difference is I just didn't change my clothes, and I just went straight to my computer. And I literally did that for a month straight, reworked my website, redid my systems, my processes. And within the first year, we were, I was up 40. I was already making more money than I was in my day job.
And I think that's what people don't talk about enough. That's the biggest thing. Because like you said, the first time clearing 6 figures, I was like,
where do I go from here?
So you mean to tell me that I was going to work, and here's to be frank with you, I can go out and shoot a wedding, right, and make anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000 for 8 hours, that's insane, right? If you think about it, that's insane. And I'm like, man, this is crazy, and I have to work maybe a month at a day job. Some of us, we're fortunate to be getting paid decent, right? A month. And some of us have to work 2 months to see that type of money. But when you are pouring your all into it, there's no limit. There's no cap. You can just keep pushing. As long as you can handle the workload, you keep pushing and keep going, So I commend you for that. And it's just one of those things where there's a lot of money that can be made in this industry. If you do it right and you work it right,
And I mean, it goes a little further than just, going to these workshops, because I think a lot of people also think that they go to the workshop and they get the one-size-fits-all tools on how to exactly.
You gotta do the work.
And one of the biggest things I found was, like, going to a bunch of workshops. I'm like, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. But at the end of the day, I'm like, well, that didn't work for me, that didn't work for me. So I kind of shifted it here, and now all of a sudden the inquiries are rolling in. And so it's all finding, like, what works, but at the same time, you have to keep in mind all those specific things, like, is my website easily readable for a client? Because I can tell you right now, my first few websites were not that great. They were pretty terrible. Oh my God. I remember my first company name, RS Creative Imaging. It makes me want to throw up now when I think about it. But, like, it was the same thing. Like, you go through all these changes in your business until you find where you feel comfortable and where you feel like you're supposed to be, and where you feel like the wheels are now consistently turning. Everything's going good. One of the biggest things I've been breaking out from this year, for me, I have a horrible fear of being in front of the camera. I don't know if you can tell.
No.
But yeah, I don't like talking, being in front of the camera, I hate it.
By the way, Chris is lying because he's amazing.
It's very uncomfortable. So, you know, it's always been uncomfortable for me. But this year, like I told myself, I'm like, well, you know, COVID started and everything kind of started slowing down. And in the back of my head, I'm like, you know, what am I going to do if weddings don't happen anymore? Granted, we're still booking weddings. They're just on a much smaller scale now. But I had to like kind of pivot my mind and be like, okay, well, what am I missing in my business and in, you know, future things that I want to do? I don't talk to my clientele enough. You know, I don't put my face out there on social media. I'm not, you know, super active on Instagram like I should be. And these are all those like kind of pitfalls where I knew I needed to start like kind of working on it. So Born podcast, hey.
That's a great plug. And I would tell you, Chris, your clientele and your future clientele, they want to see you.
Yeah.
They want to see you. They want to hear from you. They just want to be like, okay, is Chris okay? You know, or those artists that are looking for inspiration, they want to also hear and see you, you know? And that's one of the things that I've done since, well, it was a little bit before COVID. I started like this Motivational Tuesday thing, right? Every Tuesday, I started Motivational Tuesday. And I told Chris, you know, I wasn't thinking. I usually wear this hat, and I left the hat home because I wasn't thinking, right? So Motivational Tuesday started with me with my cell phone, right? Yep. I was in my car recording, and the message was great, but the quality was like, oh my God. I mean, the lens were clean and everything, but it just wasn't the same. So when I started doing like, I was like, you know, let me get this a little bit more professional. Let me get in front of the camera and talk to people. And now the amount of messages and inquiries you get as a result of that.
Huge.
And the moral of the story is whenever you step outside of your comfort zone, the amount of opportunities and the amount of overflow that comes in is insane.
Opportunity. That's the word I love, because that perfectly describes all of that. You know, the more you put yourself out there, the more opportunities that will come your way. And I think a lot of people, including myself, like, you know, I'm like, well, I'm consistently booking, everything's going fine. I don't really need to focus on, you know, getting my face out in front of the camera. And then like one time I was like, hey, just film like a little behind. I had like my assistant with me at a wedding. I'm like, hey, can you film like a little behind the scenes thing for the Instagram stories? They're filming it, and you know, all of a sudden I'm seeing like all this traction on the Instagram story coming. I'm getting messages, all this stuff. And I'm like, where did this come from? So it kind of, you know, it was kind of eye-opening, like, yeah, I do need to do that stuff that is more engaging to be able to get people's interest and be able to get, you know, people watching. And that was, I love your Motivational Tuesdays thing. And that's actually where I got the idea. I was like, wow, why didn't I ever think of Gregoire? Like, I should be talking to this guy. He is doing exactly what I want, you know, what I'm doing. And so it was really like exciting to go through. I'm not gonna lie, we went through your Facebook page today, all three of us, and we were sitting there and we watched all the ones you had posted, and a lot of the information in there is great. And so we do something kind of similar that we're starting on our podcast and on our Instagram channels, and they're called Elevated Mondays. And so what I want you to do is I want you can look at the camera right there, and I want you to give us like a great nugget of inspiration for our Elevated Mondays that we're going to use this week.
Wow, the pressure, no pressure, right?
I see you talk. Since the time you walked in here, you have been on. So I know you got a good.
So Elevated Monday, you know, so we walked in here and Chris has an amazing space and Chris has an amazing story. So what I would love for you to do, Chris, for Elevated Monday is for you to share that story, because first and foremost, guys, I walked into this place and I was like, oh, and if you can see, you can zoom in, I have goosebumps, right?
I can see them.
I have goosebumps because the key is this man built something just out of what? Out of just sheer passion, right? So I think Elevated Monday, and here it is, passion, desire. And that's all about elevation, because without those things, you can't elevate. So that would be it. I mean, I'll be 100% honest with you.
I'm doing it on Monday.
There it is.
It's already set up to record.
Done.
It's actually that little corner space.
I love that corner, man. I walked in. But that's what I think it would be. I think, honestly, like people seeing you, they can relate to you. But now people want to get to know you. Like, hey, you know what? Let me dive in a little bit more deeper. Let me connect with this guy. And I think that in itself would help others elevate. Because when people hear your story, they're like, damn. I can relate to that.
It's
I've
doable.
been there, and it's doable.
100%.
That's it.
I think, you know, a lot of the people there, they see what I'm doing in like the business that I built, and I get a lot of like, how did you do it? And I'm like,
Did you just hear that? You just said it.
I know.
You just said it, Chris.
I don't like to
Chris, you built, I know. Bro, you built this.
But they say that, and I'm like, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm like, it's not that hard. You can do it too.
Yeah.
The difference is,
Remember we talked about that secret sauce?
there is a secret sauce.
That secret
There is
sauce.
a secret sauce.
Chris, I mean,
And like
it's
all
a lot
BS,
of- yeah.
all bullshit aside, I mean, that's it for me. You have something that many people don't understand or know how to tap into. You do. Because
I don't even understand it.
but you did it.
Yeah.
So I think it has to be whatever process you went through, whatever thought that was brewing in here, and that you basically brought out into fruition. You need to basically do that same thing and be like, hey, you know what? Give them nidbits. You know, just drop little crumbs. People will follow.
Yeah, and I do that all the time anyways. While I'm not like visually
Absolutely.
present on a lot of my socials, I'm in a ton of groups. You know, just the other day, I went into one of the groups that we worked in, and I opened up. It was amazing being able to do it. I didn't realize how much I love to talk because it's a lot. So I opened up 15 spaces for 30-minute free mentor sessions over Zoom with a bunch of different photographers.
Yeah.
And every single one of those 30-minute sessions have been over an hour.
Yeah.
But just
and I can
seeing
believe that they're taking notes.
Oh, just
I can tell
seeing
you.
how
Yeah.
like I get these messages after, and just seeing how like engaged and how like incredibly thankful and grateful they were for that information. Like that's more than I need. I'm just happy to be able to share that information with people because I want other people to be successful. You know, you see, especially right now during all the, you know, the coronavirus and COVID, everything's being shut down, including a lot of small businesses. And I think, you know, being in the wedding photography industry, not so much in this position, but if you are a freelancer or self-employed person and you're working from home, you know, you have the ability to be able to create that like security for yourself because you have your rent, your car payment, and I get all that, but you don't have like, you know, your office space, or you don't have all these other things that you might not have, and that you might not have expenses for. So it's smart, and I really like a big part of this platform was to teach people all these things in business that you just don't learn. So for instance, you know, how to save money for a rainy day, how to prepare yourself in the event of a pandemic. I can't say that, you know, I ever prepared myself for a pandemic, but I prepared myself for other things to make sure that when the pandemic hits, or when, you know, anything hits, my AC at my house breaks, you know, that's $5,000. You know, I got to make sure that, you know, my family's living comfortably, and that I'm able to provide everything that I need to. So, you know, I think it's so important to know those things when it comes to running and operating your business. You know, out of the probably 50 educators I spoke to in the whole like building of all of this, there was probably maybe 10 people who could tell me what you're supposed to do when you are filing for a liability claim against your insurance.
Wow.
10 people. And that goes to show me, you know, and they all have insurance because a lot of venues require it. And that just goes to show you that like there's a very big disconnect in people knowing their business inside and out and knowing how to operate it successfully. And you know, it can come up to very rough waters very quickly if you don't pay attention to a lot of those things. And then once you get in that hole, it is tough to dig yourself out.
Absolutely.
I know you have to go. I want to talk a little bit more about there's this big achievement that you've had that I've had the pleasure of watching over the past like year or two, and that was once your business kind of took off, one of the first things you did was you bought your family a house. For 2 years, and this goes back to the whole getting in front of the camera thing, for 2 years you were in front of the camera every day showing the renovations, the before and afters. And this is because, you know, like I said, this has nothing to do with, I did no pre-planning, a little bit of pre-planning, but no pre-planning for this. This is all stuff that, you know, in the 2 years that I've known you, I've gotten to follow you on this journey, you know, your new baby, baby, your new wife, all these great things that were happening in your life. And, I wanted to ask you, what do you think when you were starting your business? So, at the beginning of your business, you're looking at the money that's coming in, you see everything that's going on, and a lot of that can get very, very disheartening very quickly. And so what do you do to keep yourself in that positive mindset? Because I know me personally, I have a problem where I react. Okay. I'm a very reactive person. Okay. Something happens, I react. Yeah. I'm always reacting to things. Yeah. And I'm never proactive, or I never sit down and actually think out the problem and try to get it done. I'm trying to do that more now, but for my entire life, it's always been react. And what's your process?
So with you, I can relate to that, because for a very long time, I was very reactive. Okay, I have to. But my mother has always been very proactive. My mother's always told me, Greg, put money away. Greg, put money away. Greg, put money away. So that's part of it that I always did. So one of the things that I did while working my photography career, I was able to balance photography and my 9 to 5, right, for a while. So one of the things that I learned very quickly was photography doubled my 9 to 5. So I'm like, hey, if I'm able to make double my income. Let's say if I'm making 150K from photography alone for that year, so I should be able to put this money away and live a good life, right? Yeah, but as you know, with photography, new gear comes out, and that never-ending cycle. It's terrible, right? But I was still very diligent, and my mother always taught me, hey, put money away. So that's one of the things I was able to accomplish and purchase the house. When we bought the house had to be completely gutted. And Chris can attest to this. I mean, saw the pictures. Completely gutted. I took it down to the bare bones. Everything.
The house is not the same house.
No, absolutely. It's a show house now. I mean, it's funny. It's our colors are similar, right? It's the gray. I love it, right?
Oh yes. Great.
So. I was able to accomplish what I did because of photography. So one of the things was, I think we spent $75,000 renovating the house, because I did all the demo myself and my contractor was really well. So that's $75,000. And I was like, you know what? I have these weddings lined up. This is how I'm going to budget for it. And this is what I'm going to do. This is my payroll, and this is how I'm going to get it worked out.
Planning.
I planned it. I worked it out, and $75,000 was paid off, and it's down. This has been 2 years. It's down to now $18,000. Wow. 2 years, right? But it took a lot of grinding, Chris. I mean, it took a lot of planning. It took hey, I have to book these weddings. I have to do this. I have to do that. But it did it, So my thing is I would tell you, keep pushing for the very proactive. Keep pushing for the proactive instead of being reactive, because now if COVID hasn't taught us anything, it should be hey, you know what? We need to put away for a rainy day, because we're talking about massive companies have shut down. Huge companies have shut down.
Big store retailers.
The event industry. There was a huge chef company, catering company out of Miami that shut down. I'm like, I wouldn't have expected to see them going. And I know recently Vizcaya has mentioned that they're running out of money to maintain the property. And I'm like, Vizcaya charges $200 to $300 per session to shoot. So if they're struggling and they're constantly busy, we have to definitely plan now. And if we don't plan now, if we don't plan to succeed, we're planning to fail, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
And that is it. But that's what's helped me. It's more so being very strategic about what's coming in, putting it away. And then it's also being smart about me, and this is something we can talk about on the education platform as well, using my business credit to basically really benefit myself. Because with the business credit, you're talking about double points and all these different things. And I poured, that year, I poured everything right back on. Anything I did it was always on the Imagery by Jules, Capital One credit card, Spark. And the amount of points and the rewards that I built up, it was insane.
And you did use Dun & Bradstreet, right?
I have Accord. I forget the company name. It's out of my mind right now. Yeah.
I've been using DMB as like
yeah.
my business credit stuff so that I could see, you know, because I didn't, when I started my business, I had no idea there was a different thing between personal credit and business credit. And then I'm, you know, reaching out to these companies and I'm like, hey, I want to rent this Red camera. I want to buy this.
Well, sir.
And they're like, well, your business credit is non-existent. Because I didn't even know I had business credit. So doing that, going in there, being able to like, you know, show like, hey, you know, this is a vendor I've been using for a long time. These are vendor, being able to show all that raises that, you know, ability to be able to do things like if you want to open a studio or if you really want to expand and scale your business, knowing your business credit is everything, because you can't get terms on literally anything without that. And the best part about it is, you know, if you're in your business, you're going to buy, like, say, for instance, you have a lot of people who want to do like the little, you know, the Volkswagen photo booths. You know, you can go and buy, they're amazing. But you can go and literally buy that on your business credit and just show. And that's another way of, now we're not saying to use credit in an irresponsible way, obviously. But, you know, it's those types of things, like, especially in COVID times, like everybody's like, oh, well, how do I offer live stream stuff? I don't have the money to buy the equipment, but I need this, and this. And, you know, if you knew about the business credit stuff and you were able to get it established and ready to go, you could be like, okay, well, I'm going to buy this live stream thing on a net 30 terms under my business because it's going to be used for business. And
then what's happened recently with the COVID, the stimulus loans and packages, you've had that, and that's the thing. I had friends and I'm like, man, you didn't apply for any of those things? Like, oh, I didn't know I could. And I'm like, well, how does your back end look? You know, and if the back end look okay, then yes, you should definitely apply for this, because they're giving these terms. They're talking about 30 years at 3% interest. In the first year, you're not paying anything back for them. This is for the EDIL, which is the emergency one. And I'm like, guys, like, take advantage of this thing. It will keep you afloat. You know, and people are worried about, oh, well, how am I going to pay back? It's $100 a month. Like, it's not a whole lot. You know, so it's.
No, and right now, you know, you could have been in a position where you were making all this money and able to pay it back faster. But right now you're in a position where you can't because you don't have money coming in. But I think either way, I mean, it's set up to help you and support you to get you through that process. And I think, like you said, you know, there wasn't a lot of information out there about it, but then also a lot of misinformation about, like, running out of money and, you know, different issues that were happening. And I think that's a very good point. If your books are not a mess on the back end, you should have no trouble. But a lot of people who, you know, are artists and creatives don't know.
Think about that. You have to separate the two. Like you said, it's a business first.
And knowing how to set yourself up, because, you know, if you're an LLC, if you're an S Corp, if you're a C Corp, all those things come with different ways of paying yourself. With an LLC, you could literally just pay yourself directly to a personal bank account. Can't be using your personal stuff on an S Corp.
No way.
So you have to know. Yes, and you have to know that you have to be paying yourself those wages as an employee. And with that, in turn, comes different ways of being able to support yourself. Buy health insurance. You know how many people don't have health insurance?
You know, oh man, and there's, you know, and that's something we'll definitely talk about, because I one of the things I would say, guys, I am great at looking at, you know, loopholes. There are loopholes in the system that we can really benefit from, and it's not anything illegal. They're just loopholes there, and because they exist, you can now use what you currently have, you know? Because I think, like, the income tax says the bare minimum you can pay yourself is probably like $700 something. It's a low payroll amount. Whatever that bare minimum amount is, if that's all you're showing as income, and you present this to the insurance companies, it's based now on income, and it's like, guys, your health insurance can be like peanuts.
You know, but there is a downside to that, because when you're doing that,
I know where you're going.
Then, you know, you're keeping most of your money into your business, reinvesting into your business, but now you're showing those low wages. You go to buy a house,
that's the only problem.
You're not going to be able to do that. And I learned that the hard way when I went to buy a house, because I was like,
sir,
I'm just reinvesting in my business, reinvesting in my business.
bring it up,
And, you know, I knew the different things I needed, but I was like, okay, well, how am I going to be able to get all this stuff? I just got to keep reinvesting in my business. My bills are paid, reinvest in my business. So, you know, all this money is going through my business, and my income is going because I'm just spending all the money. And I think in the first year or two, that's really important. And that's, you know, typically normal, but I think it's definitely smart to, you know, understand your budgeting and understand how much you're bringing in, so that you can realistically understand how much you should be putting away. I put away 30% for everything that comes in straight to taxes. And 9 times out of 10, after my, you know, after all of my expenses and everything, you know, it's going to be much less than that. And then I look at the account and I'm like, you know, I've already paid my taxes, and I'm looking at the account. I'm like, ooh, I have $9,000. Like, it's a good feeling. And then I reinvest it in more equipment, or I throw it into savings, you know, but at least that way I know that, like, everything's taken care of. You know, my budgeting is done. My
and you're
price.
not running into problems with taxes.
That's
the biggest
it's
issue.
scary.
That's it. Oof,
It's scary. And that's why, that's a whole nother topic. We need like another 4 hours for that. Coming soon on a next course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Well, Gregoire, it's been amazing getting to sit here and talk with you today. I want you guys to make sure you go and check out all of his social medias. His website's Imagery by Jules. His Instagram is Imagery by Jules Photography, and Facebook is Imagery by Jules Photography. Thank you again so much for coming on, man, and it's been great to see you. And thank you guys for watching at home, and stay tuned for the next episode. Take care.